So Al, Aaron, Anderson, let's hit the stage. Let's get this going. If y'all want to pull up the presentation, let's get this going so we can talk all about media and PR. Yeah, Peter, it's going to be good. I'm just looking for Al and Aaron and Anderson. I know they're here.
Here. Yeah, Ken, you got to give us permission to share.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Why is it not? I gotta give you permission. Okay. Who has the deck? Anderson, do you have this? Do you have the
Yeah,
deck?
I have it.
Okay. Let me see.
Ken, you keeping us locked out of greatness right now, man.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. Okay. So Anderson, I'm gonna make you a co-host, and that should be able to give you access to share your screen. Right. Anderson, can you share your camera?
Yeah, camera on.
Okay, sweet. All right, got you in the spotlight. All right. Excellence, excellence, yes.
Let's see what's happening. This is somebody else is sharing their screen.
Oh, wait, hold. I'm not sharing anything. I can pull it up and you guys can just tell me to thing.
Yep, I'll DM it to you.
Advance the slides. I think I have the deck in here. Oh, here we go. 1 second. Do that, do this. Just pulling it up. All right, here we go. Oh, that's not it. Too many things on the screen.
Oh, you gonna put it in present mode or not?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can.
Okay, you just do it like that. I don't want anybody getting no sneak peek on what's next, you know?
All right, there we go.
I mean, yeah, so some of y'all heard me during orientation and whatnot, but for those who haven't had a chance to, I'm Aaron Francois. Good to meet you guys. This is my second year doing the growth program with Kenya and everyone, also a member of the 100 Brothers from Concrete. Currently a senior connection strategist at RGA, working on Samsung, and I guess kind of like listing out some programs I've been involved with. Part of AdColor, I'm actually on the advisory board for the program. I was in MAPE 2017 for those who know about the MAPE program. And recently I was an Ad Age 2021 Diversity Champion finalist alongside Walter. So like we definitely have had a lot of time to chop it up for a while. Last but not least, always the best fun fact is that I am a pretty good dancer. That's like a holiday party special though, so I ain't really finna get up and show you that right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you guys. I would say, yeah, I kind of lucky because I got some pretty high energy dudes, and as late as it gets, yeah, I'm gonna have to wake up regardless. It's like a non-negotiable type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna pass it on to Al, let him do his intro.
There goes Al Benoit, 20 plus years in this industry, most of it as integrated planning. I'm the one with the daughter who's a princess, Disney princess, which makes me the king. I am not a good dancer, but based off that picture in the right, for one of the kids that I coached football with a couple years ago, I'm that amazing a mentor though. I can make you walk on water.
Nice.
Not doctored picture.
What's up, everyone? By now, you should know me, Anderson. I am currently an associate social media director at Rooster Teeth. I'm a father, I'm a tinkerer. I take things apart and try to put them back together. It doesn't always work. I'm the person that you call when you need to put something together for IKEA, even though I might give up halfway through it. But yeah, that's a little bit about all three of us.
Cool. Well, pretty much we have this running joke, so I'll kind of start with that too, which is that media is like the stepchild of advertising, because like nobody really knows how important it is. So that's kind of like the main preface of this conversation. Because reality is this: you should always pay attention to who's spending your money, right? Like at the end of the day, that's point blank period. Because you ain't about to get nobody no $1,000 and let them walk up the block and do what they want with it. You want to know where that money is going. Fun fact: that's your media, folks. And that is actually, it's actually interesting because media is also one of the closest things to strategy when it comes to just the overall campaign planning process. And yes, it has a different lens on it because you have to think about it differently and how it works. But in every essence, in almost every role, honestly, you have like some type of strategy to what you do. So just wanted to kind of preface it that way, and we can pretty much jump straight into like the background of what is media. There are a lot of definitions, so kind of go through the three of them. The first one is what Google refers to media. This is literally like if you were to Google what is media right now, it's just going to give you broadly a means of mass communication, which is not false, you know, it's true. But when you want to get a little more tailored to your explanation of it, you kind of want to think about it a little more in reference to what you're trying to do, because you have like your production style media, which are people who are like in the TV stations getting things done. And then you have your advertising style media folks who are the ones who we're talking to those people, trying to give them money to get like an ad or a spot there, or talking to like your Facebook social people to just get some ads like forwarded, like or better yet, added forward to just take over like a homepage or whatever the case may be. And then you have like just minuscule organic situations, which are, I wouldn't say minuscule, maybe that's the wrong word, but more like experiential type of situations where you get into that realm of just creating like an entire, like an environment, right, that goes beyond like digital or traditional media lenses. Oftentimes people think that media is just like the way you consume, whether it's like news, music, movies, education, like think about it a lot more like base level. But the reality is that it's anything that can showcase like any type of brand messaging or content. So realistically speaking, when you go to an event, whether it's a conference or whatever, you have like some swag they give you with like a Spotify, like phone charger, portable charger, whatever the case may be. To some extent, that's a media play for them because it's branded content that they're passing out to people, right? And it's one type of media. It's not holistically all types of media, but that is one way. When you get those random text messages saying like your limited warranty from your phone service is now expired or whatever the case may be, to some extent, that's somebody's media approach. It ain't the best one. It's not the preferred one, but it is still some type of media approach. And the things that are kind of like the most important to keep in mind when you think about media is that you're consuming media all day, every day, right? Like even word of mouth is a type of advertising that people don't even consider to be like media per se. But like half people get their iPhones because their friends all have iPhones that talk about how much they enjoy it, right? So to some extent, media worked well. Like, and it got to a point where they didn't have to pay for it. That's what you would call organic media, where it just becomes like free promotion. And someone's just basically like, yo, like, why do you like, speaking from experience, I was an Android user for mad long, like loyal to the gang. And next thing you know, I had the opportunity to buy the iPhone because it was cheaper. And I was like, yeah, you know, I'll do that. And I felt like I joined a cult, right? But like afterwards, like you realize like how much branding went out for that product itself just because of your friends like talking about how convenient it was and the group chats and this and that, like just discussing product features without Apple having to go to them and say, we'll pay you to promote this. And that's kind of like the power of like how media can influence what people think, because these are things that they have not only learned from their interaction with the phone, but these are things that are built into their mind from the ads that they've seen from Apple, because they're like, this is what my product can do. Oh, wow. It's like an instilled confidence that comes from the way the brand communicates to them, which then creates this, like, I want to share with my friends type of interaction. And that spans across a lot of industries. We could move on to the next slide there. And pretty much wanted to discuss how media plays a role in just the overall process. Media is that tactical execution that pretty much decides like how to best or most effectively use your creative. And then it kind of executes whatever the strategy was planning in advance. Like we don't forget our strategy people, because at the end of the day, we got to make sure they're happy too. But our goal is to make sure we're performing, right? And we have to make sure the client is getting the most bang for their buck, because the last thing you want to do is waste somebody's money, especially knowing it's going to be a waste. Because that's where we have to not only play that strategic aspect of it, but to some extent, you got to be that accountant, right? Like you want to, or be that financial analyst, better yet, where you are the one who's like forecasting, like if you're going to spend X amount of money, my anticipation is that your return on investment may be X, Y, and Z based on past performance. And it's always interesting because you're constantly proving to people why you think that they're going to do well based on how they've done in the past, or sometimes they don't have anything. Like right now, a lot of you guys obviously have clients that don't have the best or most beneficial metrics. So the fun part of this is that you kind of get to help them create the metrics that do dictate how they know when their brand is doing well. Like you become the new benchmark, right? And that's where a lot of what media does comes into play. And to what I was discussing earlier, around the different lenses that kind of circle media, give or take, you have like that strategic aspect. Like my role is comm strategy, which is very heavily involved with media, but it's just from more of a strategical aspect and understanding like how it works together to get the messaging out. Then you have your creative aspect of it, which is just more so working with your creative team to say like, all right, you guys have this amazing spot or like this nice piece of work that you've been working on. Well, now where's it going to live, right? Because some things don't work for an Instagram or a TikTok, give or take nowadays, or some things don't work for a billboard or a train station or etc. Like, and then that's where you kind of come into to discuss feasibility, and you have to put your heads together and make sure that it's working across the board. Then you have your account folks. You guys are kind of lucky because I feel like account folks, like y'all get babied. Like everybody wants to make y'all happy, right? Because like at the end of the day, it's like your account people have to like you. Because other than that, they're gonna look at you like, well, I'm the lead for this situation. So either you love me or leave me alone. That's Kenny said earlier, right? So that's where I think that it kind of plays that just that interpersonal communication aspect. And also depending on where you are, you might be the account management person. Because if you're at a media agency, you are the account person. I can guarantee you that, especially if you're a planner. And last but not least, you have like traffic and creative delivery aspect, which falls under production. I'm also an all-encompassing scenario. And there are some cases where you can end up at a company doing one, and there's some cases where you're doing a little bit of everything. I personally, my experience was doing a little bit of everything because I came from a planning background as a supervisor. And literally all of these pieces of it I'm familiar with. And it was like, wow, I didn't realize how much of every function I now had under my belt. Another piece here that is not necessarily notated, but you definitely learn it, and this is in almost every role, is you do get that project management experience. In order to be good at your job, you have to be a minuscule project manager for yourself. So you do have to learn how to handle those timelines and all that extra stuff on your own, And Alan Anderson, if y'all want to add anything.
No, just building off that and giving an example. When you look at it, and when you look at certain products, when you look at Oreos, you look at Cheerios, you look at Tide, right? A lot of those brands are Pepsi. A lot of those brands are mass brands. You have no idea where to put them because everybody consumes them. Maybe you have a small skew towards a particular audience. But where it comes into play from a media standpoint is understanding the contextual and higher end benefit, right? And the higher end benefit that ties a lot of them together is about family, right? So now that I have the lens of the product usage, as well as it's about shared experiences, right? Tide enables you to have shared experiences and still get dirty and still live and to the fullest. Cheerios is about family time. Pepsi is about shared experiences, especially with the younger audience. Once I have that context, then I'm able to increase the alignment and have better strategy and execution that matches up with the creative, because I took a mass use product and I got the context from working with my strategy folks, my creative folks, the brief, and then production, and knowing where it was going to end up at the end, right? And that also complements relative to what Anderson does in PR, is being able to extend and tell that story elsewhere throughout.
Yep. Anderson, had anything else?
Yeah, I want to say working in PR, these four circles on the outside of media, they stretch what media is so often. And as a PR person, you often sit in middle of all of these things. You're working with the creatives, you're working with the strategists, you're working with the production team, and you are trying to make sure that the account team is happy. But you wear several hats because the ultimate goal is to communicate your brand's position in a way that is more humanistic, right? And more human focused, relationship focused. I think the more you work at a brand, it's you become sort of indoctrinated in their own beliefs, and it becomes more and more difficult for you to relate to the average consumer. And so you do find yourself having to wear all of these hats, and I've certainly done it. I've put together the creative brief, put together the strategic brief, work with the creatives to get things in production, and work with the account team to make sure that we're communicating with the clients in an effective way. And so you wear all of these hats, you sit in these positions, but that's what makes things a little bit more interesting and hectic at times, but you get to play multiple positions, and you kind of have to use like your interpersonal skills in order to manage these different like personalities.
And pretty much this slide wanted to give you guys a little more insight with something that I think is to some extent relatable into like the different functions that fall within media. And I mean, I kind of prefaced it last time I spoke to you guys, but I'm pretty much a comic book lover, so this is my way of showcasing how I bring the two worlds together. But yeah, like you actually have the opportunity at points in time to also split your interest in media. Like I know we've talked about how you pretty much wear a bunch of hats, and I mean that's every role. Like to some extent, you're gonna always do something a little bit outside your whole damn situation. Like, oh, this wasn't what I was hired for. Like that's beyond advertising. I'm pretty sure there were some jobs where you're like, I don't get paid to do this, but you still ended up somehow magically doing it. That's just the real world, right? But as you go into media, and you do get that understanding, you'll see that there are definitely different aspects of it. So like you have your media buyers, like I kind of call them the magicians. That's why they got the Doctor Strange aspect to it. Like they can make something out of nothing all the time. Like they're the ones who you're like, yeah, this network is giving me a hard time, and they're like, yo, let me give them a quick little call, or let me give them a ring. This is my guy at this station. Next thing you know, you got like 100K off, some added value inventory, blah 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 blah. You're like, damn, this guy is good. And how do you do it? He ain't gonna tell you because that's his secret sauce, right? Very similar. And then you have your analysts, right? Those are like the super detailed, like down to the nitty gritty aspects of it. Those are like the numerical lovers, right? Those are the folks who they want to know, where are my numbers at? How are we going to make this work? Oh, you didn't pay attention to what we saw last year, and that's how we ended up in this situation. Like they're the ones who want to point fingers sometimes and be like, well, you should have paid closer attention because I gave you these numbers like about 3 weeks ago before you started playing this campaign. But they're also the ones who you should be best friends with, because when you start to understand their world, they definitely can help you out for a fact and ensure that you guys are both on the same page. And they honestly, the more they can convey their knowledge to you, the smarter you're always going to sound, especially if you're not a numerically savvy individual. Having an analyst on your side who can communicate well definitely will help you and save your life all the time for a fact. Moving on to like the planners, those are just they're oftentimes like the client leads. Like they kind of take the charge, and similar to like this Captain America situation. I actually personally hate Captain America, but similar to the Captain America situation, like they're going to be the ones who they kind of take the charge, or they're going to just run into that face of adversity. They deal with the clients as those account managers type situations would go, but also they're the ones who have to figure out what role does everything play in the grand scheme of things, right? Like how he would lead the Avengers and have to figure out who's going to do what in that game plan. It's definitely like the exact same concept where you're like, oh, we're going to run some TV, we're going to run some radio, we might do a digital direct integration with Spotify, but how does that play a role into the grand scheme of things? How do we make these things work together? And the client's also doing this PR thing where they want this like mass press release or whatever they're doing. So how do we fit all of those together? But there are also times where you may not be buying it, but you have to account for it. And that's oftentimes one of the biggest aspects of media, because your clients are still going to do their part, right? So how do you take their holistic brand image into account with the work that you're doing. And last but not least, you have your strategists. Those are the folks who they always have to just think ahead, keep up with trends, take note of things that are happening. Pretty similar to like Batman, who you don't got no powers. I don't really care about him, but he's like the guy who, you know, he does the analysis. He sees where things are going, and he makes informed decisions based on what's happening there, you know, and like how that's going to work to his benefit in the future. And that's what being a strategist is all about. It's predicting, understanding, and also being able to make an informed decision on what's to come in the future based on the information you've already gathered. And oftentimes the strategist and the analyst, they can either have comparable roles, or they could be best friends and be the ones who are always working together. Because like in order to have strategy, you need insight. In order to have insight, you need data, right? So how do you think that's going to go full circle for you? So that's where a lot of this connects. And oftentimes you'll be in a role where the strategist may be the media and comms planners. Like sometimes they may be slightly interchangeable depending on how your agency may function. Same thing with being a buyer. Like you can be a media comms planner and buyer, depending on how small the firm may be. So it definitely can vary based on where you are, but these are things that it's good to be informed about, because now you know the right questions to ask, right? Like when you walk to the door and you're like, what does this role entail? If they're like, yeah, you'll be doing planning and buying, and you really only want to do planning, you better get prepared because buying is also a heavy load on its own, right? Like it could be its own full function. So you want to know what you're kind of signing up for at that moment. And next slide, got one over to that.
And we're behind on time.
Cool. And just wanted to just kind of go through like some of the most interesting parts of media. My very biased opinion, but you got back for a second? Yeah, so one of the biggest things is that media is always changing. As we mentioned earlier, it's built into your everyday life. It's one of the things that always allows for you to just be creative and innovative in your thinking. It's most aligned with your client sales goals, has the tangible success metrics that everyone wants. And it's also just a multifaceted field, which we've already went through. So I'm not going to hold on to this. And on the next slide, it kind of details what the new media landscape looks like. And this is obviously evolved, still ever evolving, but then you, just to give you that insight, you have your paid or purchase channels, which are like your regular advertisements, sponsorships, email, earned, which a lot of you guys actually partake in when you share things from brands that you like, when they have like a new product that drops or whatever the case may be. And then you have like just own, when a brand just publishes their content to their own channels. A good example is like product review videos, right? When they have like on like Google's Pixel, whatever use case, or testimonial type content, like things like that. Those are very good examples of this, like leveraging your own content to your own advantage. And the next slide, I think we can kind of hop past that, but this is just another view of some examples of like traditional and non-traditional media channels. But now I'm just gonna kind of let Al give you guys his overview.
All right, marvelous. In regards to how to be ideally an ideal partner, whether that is within your agency counterparts or with a client, it just makes sure that you know everybody's job, as well as you're in a situation and you're thinking from an aspect that encapsulates all of the all those superpowers that we saw previously, right? And one of those key elements is making sure that we're optimizing the spend and the interaction across the media channels. Next slide. Right, and ultimately, again, as an extension of strategy, asked a range of questions. In this particular one, we have a finite, limited budget. Where should we start? So I've had conversations with the media folks. We start with the free stuff, apologies. We start with the free stuff. And some of that is the owned aspects. And some of that as well extends to search in regards to the search engine optimization and how do we improve our website in order to make sure that we come up higher in terms of search rankings. And then I've also talked to the team in regards to a finite budget, whether we calendar it or we do spend some of the money, how does that impact the floor of the organization in regards to its revenue or its the engagement or the whether it be donations or it be volunteering, and how do we increase what the floor is based off that finite amount of spending, right? And when do we do that? The added value also complements the stuff that we do in PR in terms of thinking, how can I extend this messaging? How can I extend this engagement, the experiential, and improve the contextual alignment? Ultimately, you're asking an exhaustive list of whys and what else, with the North Star being, why does someone care, right? And similar to what we talked about before, Tide is not selling detergent to clean your products better. Tide is selling detergent to a core part of their audience to be a better parent. Being a better mom is what Tide is selling, right? There's a higher end benefit to so many different products. It is shared experiences. It is status, right? A functional car costs $20,000, $18,000 brand new, but people spend 5 times that. Why? Status, right? Understanding the higher end benefit or the true reason that people are doing something, right? And that's critical in that alignment and that understanding for the contextual alignment for your nonprofits, right? And then ultimately, obviously we live in a digital world with a lot of digital extensions, but one of the conversations I've had with many of my creative teams is, if you say you're as good as what you are, then you can make the most out of any medium, right? Next slide. So magazines and out of home are some examples. These are all out of home elements, right? From a toilet paper billboard to physically writing on a human being, to a razor Zamboni, to Shark Week promo in an elevator, to wanting to get off the subway to get to the beach, to going to the zoo, right? Or breaking, or the proverbial breaking of a bench in terms of weight loss, right? And then there's World Cup, right? That's in the middle. The reality is that you shouldn't be limited by your budget, and you shouldn't be limited by your medium in producing great and amazing work. Next slide, please. And again, a lot of that you're going to find in from your client. So you guys are have the challenge as a media professional. You have the challenge of kind of digging deep in regards to the research. So Aaron talked about it earlier. It's a lot of data digging. It's a lot of research. It's not analytics, but that analytics gets you that insight, right? So it's the research that gets you to the data that gets you to the insight that gets you to the creative, and all that gets you into breakthrough business results. So that's why it's an exhaustive process to ask, who am I speaking to? Who's my best audience? Who's my low-hanging fruit? What does success look like, right? A lot of times we are the nerds, ultimately, of the media landscape, where we are creative, but there is a strong focus on numbers, whether they are the KPIs that we have in the front end, or ultimately the sales metrics that we deliver on the back end. Next slide. Again, we could briefly go through this. In terms of the process, it's identifying media channels, the competitive insights, the research that we go through, and then the strategy and creative alignment to optimize what the data already tells us in regards to just the audience. And then ultimately, there's elements to incorporate and enhance, not only the contextual alignments, not only just programmatic buying, which is tied to less demographic, but more so tied to where people are in the purchasing process, which we'll talk about in the funnel. And then ultimately an extension of PR, which is experiential, where it gets that added value and that engagement from a different aspect. So that could be street fairs and events, that could be street teams, that could be usage of the product, that could be sampling. There's a bunch of different ways in regards to experiential. And then ultimately we live for the funnel. So it's basically just a range of going down the top pyramid to get the purchase. And then the bottom half of the pyramid is more so marketing, but advertising sometimes plays into that in regards to once you've gotten that purchase, how do you get that advocacy and championing of your brand, and a lot of that PR as well as um, owned impressions. So ultimately going down, you're starting off with awareness and knowing that you want to maximize your awareness, because ultimately the purchase funnel, the purchase elements, or the purchase audience is going to be finite and smaller than your engagement and awareness. And sometimes that means you come at it at a particular point. You might identify, or your media professionals might identify, that the evaluation standpoint and the communication there is where it makes the most sense to expand that width of the funnel to ultimately maximize a purchase instead of awareness. So so that might be the ideal low-hanging fruit in regards to people who use it a little bit or volunteer a little bit, and you want them to volunteer more. People who volunteer a little bit, but you want them to now donate. People who donate once a year, and you want them to donate 4 times a year, right? So that evaluation and that mid-funnel audience might be an ideal place to start, as opposed to just adding completely new people into the landscape, because they cost more to get and convert ultimately to purchase. Next slide.
All right, so let's talk PR. I know that the time is against us, so we're going to move through these next few slides extremely quickly. Kenny, if you want to move to the next slide. So consider this, like everything in the world that you see and interact with or consume is probably coming from a PR angle. Every news story, oftentimes someone is pitching the media to cover a specific thing. Or when there's a social, like a political crisis that you only hear about for 24 hours, that's typically handled through a PR lens or PR person. The easiest way for me to put it, and you'll see it in the next upcoming slide, is I don't know how many of you guys used to watch, dang, why am I forgetting the name of the show? With Olivia Pope. But consider she's the fixer of any, Scandal. Consider that she's the fixer of any situation. That is what we do in PR. But that's one arm of it. And we do everything else. So that's talking with the media, training your CEOs or your creative or whomever in order for them to engage with the media in an appropriate way. Social media strategy is usually handled under the PR umbrella. Market research, or most broadly, and what everyone consumes every day, influencer relations or influencer marketing. That's usually handled under the umbrella of PR, and it usually comes out of the PR budget. So every influencer that you've ever seen promote a product or an event, it's usually handled by a PR person, 9 times out of 10. It's a PR person who's reached out to them, negotiated the salary, and moved forward through them. And remember, at the core of PR is communication. Clients, like the more you guys work in this industry, you'll realize clients are, I want to use the word lightly and say crazy. They don't know what they want, and they don't know how to communicate something. And it can be something as simple as a piece of candy. I worked for a chocolate company. Let's just say a chocolate company, and they did not want their product to be named or called candy, right? And they had their own rationale and reason as to why. And we couldn't target to kids. We couldn't do it. We had a lot of restrictions, and so it was taking the brand, like listening to what listening to the clients and how they describe the brand, and then translating that into consumer facing speak. Let's go to the next slide. So yeah, we have Olivia Pope. She is the most prominent example of a PR professional. Whenever there was an issue, and this is more in terms of crisis communications or corporate communications, she would handle it, and the public would not even be aware that this issue even happened. And oftentimes, that is what a PR professional's job is. You need to know and understand how to communicate your issues or your goals or whatever you're having, you need to be able to communicate that to an audience that is either extremely upset or extremely like hurt or distraught. Oftentimes, you need to communicate it in a way that minimizes the risk the brand is going to face. Let's go to the next slide. So, like I said, there is a variety of different types of PR. Some of the ones that are not included here is corporate communications, influencer relations, influencer identification. Influencer is an emergent space. It's blowing up, and it has been for a number of years, but it's more and more being parsed over to a PR person or PR company in order for them to identify and engage with influencers on the behalf of a company. But when I was starting out, and even when I was back at City College, PR classes were the classes that I hated the most. I hated writing press releases because it was so structured. But I didn't realize at that point that the PR realm is such a wide one, and it touches all of the various legs that we've interacted with this afternoon in terms of media, but also it touches creative, it touches strategy. So consider everything that you've seen. Like it is to a point in my life now that I can't watch local news because all of the stories are clearly PR stories. Someone clearly pitched the media in order for them to get coverage on like a donut shop opening or a basketball team. And you can, when they speak, you can almost read the press release that the PR person wrote for them. And so just consider this, like every article in like a magazine, every news outlet, like all of those things are generally handled through the lens of a PR person. Some person pitched them and they accepted the story and then they covered it in some capacity. Let's go to the next slide. So if you want to get into PR, here's some three quick skills that you're going to need to employ. You're going to have to be a people person. And what's funny, because a lot of PR people are not personable on the back end, but I would always suggest that you be a people person because you're going to have to interact with people all the time. You have really, really good or moderate to good writing skills, and you're always understanding the current trends because you never know how that trend can impact your client. Yeah, right. So some other skills that are really good to have: resourcefulness, attention to detail, culturally relevant. It's always good to have like an eye on, the streets, as they would say, but the digital streets. So if you think now, one of the biggest trending moments or trending things that are happening is a lack of employment. Like people are unwilling to take these lower paying jobs. So there's like a crisis that's slowly happening in terms of like employment. And that can affect like, it seems really, really small and minor, but if you're on the brand side, I'm sure the brands that are mentioned in those conversations and in those news pieces are freaking out, like the Walmarts and the Amazons. If you want to see a very well curated PR, you would take a look at what these big corporations are doing. And even though in the back of your head, you understand that they are oftentimes not the most like fiscally responsible or personally responsible, they have a good way of curtailing that and making sure that you only see the good things. So Amazon is the master of this. They are literally becoming the #1 employer in our country. They're like, I believe they're #2 or #3. And they treat their workers terribly. But we all associate and have good feelings about Amazon because of how it makes us feel. But we're not necessarily always aware of the damage that they're doing to the communities that they leech onto. Let's move forward. Awesome. So you guys want to take it over?
So yeah, just wanted to share that whether you're in media or creative, there's a range of opportunities for independent learning, as well as most of these are free. So first and foremost, I'll say, if you're going to ask for a birthday present, um, it's too early for a Christmas present, but if you could get one, then that's fine. Ask for LinkedIn Premium. LinkedIn Premium is going to give you access to not all of these particular tools, but project management certifications and tools, um, some of the Microsoft, a range of other skills and knowledge that will cost on an individual basis hundreds of dollars that you're getting as part of this access to be able to reach out to 15 people or whatever the number is a month in your work outreach or your job hunting outreach or your informative interview request outreach over this next year or so of preparing for a career in 2022, or if you're already in the marketplace, being able to do that now. So again, Facebook Blueprint, you guys have already gotten some of that Facebook training, but the Blueprint is also in case you're a small business owner, and it tells you how to optimize from a small business perspective in Facebook and Instagram. Google, its range of free stuff. Microsoft Office, if you do have Excel, get to the next level. Again, YouTube is your friend. Figure out what pivot tables are and VLOOKUP. Those things on a resume, especially for media, definitely gets an eyebrow raise in interest. Understanding AI and where that stands now. Separate from that, understanding GDPR and the data privacy that's happening in the world, because that's going to impact media as well as targeting. And then the rest of the stuff, right? Just being able to make sure you're present with the trades and upskilling across the board, across your particular disciplines or disciplines of interest. And that's it. It all fits together. It all complements. For their media teams and your PR teams, first and foremost, they're going to be looking at the minimize the paid, but their earned and owned assets is where they're going to start to play and where we think we can have the greatest return for our clients, and then ultimately incorporate a layer of paid that gives them the guidance of where they should spend and prioritize moving forward once those other efforts have garnered them incremental success, so that they get to a point where they have the revenue to incorporate someone to specifically do the advertising aspects and or the budget to implement it into their broader offerings. That's it. Thank you for your time.
All right, all right. So thank you, Al, Aaron. I'll just come and call y'all AAA at this point. AAA at this point, right? Thank you, AAA, for a really great presentation all about media and PR. I know all of you have already been in touch with the media and PR folks on the variety of teams. So I'm not going to open it up for questions because you all have already been in touch with them, and any additional questions, all the gifts can reach out to you all on Slack and everything like that. So with the remaining, all right, we got 10 minutes, but we can extend it to 11 to anyone that can stay around. But I suggest all the teams kind of cipher into your breakouts. And because Rebecca and I want to stop by, and your creative mentors obviously will be in your breakouts, but really stop by and really hear where you guys are right now in the process with your creative ideation. So if you all want to slide into your breakouts, they're open right now, and we'll see y'all in there in a minute. And if anyone needs help, just holler and I'll help you out. So Devon, I got you.
We got jokes, Kenny.
I always got jokes on.
Hi, I'm sorry. There's no breakout room for the Children's Rescue Fund.
Are you serious? I thought I made one.
Looks like it was
Bullshit.
purged.
That's that bullshit.
Team. That's okay.
This is the room.
Wait, no, Northwest Bronx. Okay, you're probably right. You're probably right. 1 second.
Great job, Aaron. Great job. That was good.